I spent $50 at Dollar Tree and put 15 viral indoor plant hacks to the test so you don't have to. Some of these completely shocked me. A few were just fine and a couple were flat out duds. Today I'm walking you through every single one so you know exactly what's worth trying in your own home. If you're new here, welcome to Green Haven Homes. I share practical, budget-friendly ways to make your indoor garden thrive without overthinking it. If that's your vibe, hit subscribe and tap the like button so more plant lovers can find this video. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. All right, let's jump in. We're starting with the watering and moisture hacks, and the very first one might be the most surprising of the entire list. Hack number 1, wine bottle terracotta stakes using clay pot feet. The first viral trick uses a simple clay pot foot as a terracotta watering spike, and honestly, I didn't expect it to hold up as well as it did. The idea is to flip the pot foot vertically, nestle the narrow end into the soil, and place a small bottle of water upside down on top so it slowly releases moisture throughout the day. When I set this up, I was sure the water would gush out immediately or barely drip at all, but the flow was surprisingly steady. Over the next few hours, I watched the soil darken evenly around the root zone, and by the next morning the plant looked fresher, perkier, and noticeably less thirsty. What impressed me most was how consistent the moisture stayed without creating soggy pockets, which is usually the biggest problem with DIY watering hacks. It acted a lot like a store-bought terracotta stake, but for a tiny fraction of the price. I tested the setup on a peace lily, a fern, and a pothos, and the plants that crave steady hydration clearly loved it. The fern stayed lush without the crispy tips it usually gets in dry weather, and the peace lily didn't droop once, even on a warm day when it typically starts begging for water. It's not a perfect fit for plants that need their soil to dry out between waterings, like succulents or snake plants. But for anything that prefers even moisture, this hack is honestly impressive. If you've ever forgotten to water or you travel a lot, this is one of those cheap tricks that actually makes plant care easier instead of creating extra work. This one earned a solid works from me. Hack number 2, the foam brush moisture meter. This one takes the wooden handle from a Dollar Tree foam brush and turns it into a super simple moisture indicator. The idea is that unfinished wood darkens when it absorbs water, so you push the handle into the soil and use the color change as your guide. At first I assumed it would be too unreliable to bother with, but it ended up being surprisingly practical. When the soil was still damp below the surface, the handle darkened within minutes. When the plant actually needed water, the handle stayed its normal light color even after a few tries. It didn't give me hyper-precise readings, but it instantly told me whether the soil was wet enough to hold off or dry enough to water, which is what most people really need day to day. I compared it directly to 2 actual moisture meters, one cheap and one mid-range. And the foam handle lined up with both far more often than I expected. It especially helped with plants in deeper pots where the top looks dry but the middle is still very wet. The only time it struggled was with super compact or clay-heavy soil mixes because the wood didn't absorb as quickly, but in regular potting mix it performed well every single time. For the cost of $1 and some change, this is a clever, zero-tech way to avoid overwatering, and it's perfect for beginners or anyone who wants a quick read without buying another tool. Hack number 3, kitchen sponges for water retention. This hack uses a basic Dollar Tree kitchen sponge at the bottom of a pot to hold a little extra moisture while still letting excess water drain out. When I tested it, I cut the sponge to fit snugly beneath the soil and watered the plant as usual. Right away I noticed the sponge soaked up the runoff without turning the pot into a swamp. Over the next few days, the soil stayed evenly moist instead of drying out in patches, which is a common problem in drier homes or with fast-draining mixes. The sponge acted like a tiny reservoir, releasing moisture slowly while still allowing air to flow through the roots. It made the plant feel more stable and reduced the number of micro-waterings I usually do between full waterings. Long-term, I was curious whether it would break down too fast or cause any weird smells. After several weeks of testing, the sponge held up better than expected. It didn't get slimy, and it didn't clog the drainage holes. Plants that appreciate a steady supply of moisture, like herbs, ferns, and calatheas, noticeably benefited from the more consistent environment. For succulents or plants that prefer to dry out completely, this isn't the best choice. But for anything that struggles with quick evaporation or uneven watering, this trick is genuinely useful. It's inexpensive, easy to set up, and surprisingly effective, which puts it firmly in the works category for me. Hack number 4, Mosquito Bits Soak for Fungus Gnat Control. This one is all about using mosquito bits to tackle fungus gnats, which might be the most annoying issue indoor plant people deal with. The hack goes like this. You scoop a small handful of the bits into a jar of water, let them soak until the water turns a light yellow, and then use that infused water to hydrate your plants. The idea is that the active ingredient targets the larvae in the soil without harming the plant. When I tested it, I watered a few of my most gnat-prone plants with the soak and left a couple untreated as a comparison. Over the next week, I noticed fewer gnats hovering around the treated plants and far less activity when I disturbed the soil. It wasn't instant magic, but it definitely started working faster than I expected for something so low effort. After 2 full weeks, the difference became really obvious. The plants that got the mosquito bit soak had dramatically fewer gnats, and the sticky traps I placed nearby showed about half the catch they normally get. The untreated plants, meanwhile, kept producing fresh gnats every time I watered. I also compared the soak method to simply sprinkling the bits on top of the soil, and the soak gave much more consistent results. The only thing to keep in mind is that you need to reapply it for a bit until the population dies down. But that's true for almost any gnat solution. For the cost, the ease, and the actual results, this hack is a strong works, especially if you're dealing with a chronic gnat problem. Now we'll be proceeding into plant support and structure hacks, starting with hack number 5, bamboo skewers and twine for custom trellises. Hack number 5, bamboo skewer trellises. This hack takes those simple Dollar Tree bamboo skewers and turns them into lightweight, custom trellises for climbing plants. I started by laying out a few skewers on a table and experimenting with different shapes, from a basic ladder design to a crisscross pattern that looks surprisingly polished for something that cost pocket change. Once I wrapped the joints with twine, the whole structure felt sturdier than I expected. When I pushed it into the soil and guided a pothos onto it, the plant grabbed on almost immediately, and the trellis didn't wobble or lean the way I worried it might. It blended nicely into the pot and gave the plant an instant sense of direction without taking up much space. To see how strong it really was, I tested it with a bigger, heavier pothos that usually drapes instead of climbs. Even with thicker vines and a bit of weight, the trellis stayed put. That impressed me because flimsy DIY supports often collapse under pressure. The twine also gave the vines a textured surface to grip, which made training them easier. The best part is how customizable the setup is. You can make small ones for tabletop plants, tall ones for floor plants, or decorative shapes if you want something that adds personality. It's cheap, effective, and surprisingly sturdy, so this hack is a clear win. Hack number 6, command hooks and string lights for a hanging vine display. This hack turns basic command hooks and a strand of Dollar Tree string lights into a glowing vine wall, and it ended up looking way better than I expected. I started by mapping out where I wanted the hooks so the vines could drape naturally without pulling too hard in any one direction. The hooks pressed firmly to the wall and didn't peel the paint or leave marks, which is always the main concern with renter-friendly setups. Once the lights were in place, I wrapped a pothos around the line and let the vines cascade between the hooks. The whole thing instantly looked intentional and cozy, like a plant feature you'd see in a small studio apartment makeover. The lights gave the vines a soft highlight, and the cables practically disappeared behind the leaves. To test the strength, I loaded the hooks with thicker vines and a little extra weight to see if anything slipped. They held surprisingly well as long as you stick to lightweight trailing plants. I wouldn't try this with a heavy monstera, but for pothos, ivy, and philodendron varieties, the setup held steady for days without sagging. It also made daily care easier because the vines were already elevated and visible, so any yellowing leaves or dry nodes were easy to spot. Beyond function, it adds a nice decorative touch without buying expensive wall grids or shelving. For low-maintenance styling, renter safety, and sheer affordability, this hack earns a solid works in my book. Hack number 7, the cooling rack moss pole alternative. This hack uses a Dollar Tree cooling rack as a budget moss pole, and it honestly surprised me with how sturdy and practical it turned out. I started by bending the rack into a cylinder and fastening the edges with zip ties. It rolled into shape much more easily than I expected, and once it was secured, it felt solid and ready to hold weight. I packed it with damp moss, pushed it into the pot, and guided a climbing philodendron around it. The plant latched onto the metal grid without hesitation, and the structure stayed upright even when the vines started to pull. The open squares also allowed the moss to breathe, which kept it from getting soggy or smelling weird over time. It created a climbing surface that looked clean, intentional, and almost identical to prissier poles. To get a fair comparison, I placed the cooling rack pole next to a store-bought moss pole on two similar plants. Over the next few weeks, the growth rate and attachment were almost the same. The big difference was cost and size. A normal moss pole can easily run $15 or more, but the cooling rack is just over $1 and gives you a taller, wider pole right away. It's also easier to shape because you can make it narrow for small pots or keep it wide for bigger plants without losing strength. If you're growing monsteras, philodendrons, or any vine that loves climbing, this hack is a genuine money saver that performs just as well as the real deal. Hack number 8, plastic coat hangers reshaped as plant clips. This hack transforms ordinary plastic coat hangers into versatile plant clips, and it's both clever and surprisingly functional. I started by heating the plastic slightly with warm water to make it pliable, then bent it into small U-shaped clips that could hold stems gently but securely. The clips gripped thin vine stems without crushing them and could also support thicker branches with just a minor adjustment to the bend. I tested them on a variety of plants, from delicate pothos vines to sturdier monstera leaves, and each clip held the plant in place without slipping or damaging the stems. One hanger yielded multiple clips, which made it easy to support several plants at once. And because the plastic is smooth, it didn't snag leaves or soil. The real beauty of this hack is its adaptability. You can make clips in different sizes, use them to train vines along trellises, or even secure climbing plants to walls or poles. They're lightweight, reusable, and cost almost nothing compared to store-bought clips or ties. After testing them over a couple of weeks, all the plants stayed positioned exactly where I wanted, and the clips held up well with repeated use. This is one of those simple, creative hacks that makes plant care easier and more organized without spending extra money. Now we proceed into potting and repotting hacks. Hack number 9, pool noodles for pot drainage fill. This hack uses Dollar Tree pool noodles to create lightweight drainage layers in large planters, and it's one of those ideas that feels obvious once you see it, but is surprisingly effective. I cut the noodles into small chunks and placed them at the bottom of a tall ceramic pot before adding soil. The goal was to reduce the overall weight of the planter while still allowing water to drain freely. When I watered the plant, the water moved through the soil evenly and didn't pool excessively at the bottom. The plant stayed healthy, and the pot felt significantly lighter, which makes moving large planters around much easier. A big plus if you're rearranging or need to rotate plants for sunlight. I tested this method on a few heavy pots with snake plants and ferns, and the noodles didn't compress or break down over several weeks. The soil above stayed well aerated, and the plants didn't show any signs of root stress. While traditional materials like broken pottery or gravel also work, they're heavier and don't give the same weight reduction benefits. This hack is especially handy for those with large indoor trees or bulky planters, making it easier to manage without compromising drainage. It's affordable, effective, and simple to implement, which definitely puts it in the works category. Hack number 10, plastic Tupperware lids as saucers. This hack repurposes inexpensive Tupperware lids as plant saucers, and it turned out to be both practical and surprisingly versatile. I went through a few lid sizes to find the best fit for the pots I had, making sure each lid could catch excess water without letting it overflow. Once in place, the lids held up well under repeated watering, showing no signs of warping or cracking. I also experimented with slightly larger lids for bigger pots, which allowed for easier cleanup when watering messy plants. Beyond functionality, they can even double as a mini platform to slightly elevate smaller pots, preventing water stains on furniture while adding a subtle decorative touch. What impressed me most was the durability and cost-effectiveness. While some store-bought saucers can be pricey or prone to cracking, these lids are cheap, sturdy, and easy to replace if needed. I even tried a few decorative tweaks like painting or adding washi tape around the edges, which gave the pots a polished look without spending extra money. For anyone managing multiple indoor plants, especially on hard surfaces, this is a simple hack that works, saves money, and keeps your space neat. Hack number 11, silicone cupcake liners as mini cash pots. This hack turns Dollar Tree silicone cupcake liners into tiny reusable cash pots, perfect for succulents, cacti, or small herb arrangements. I placed the liners inside decorative pots and poured in a small amount of soil, creating a neat barrier that catches excess water while keeping the main pot clean. Because the silicone is flexible, it fits snugly into a variety of container shapes and sizes, and it's easy to remove if you want to swap plants or clean the liner. I tested it with several small succulents and noticed that water didn't pool at the bottom, which helped prevent root rot, a common problem with tiny plants. It also keeps the pots looking tidy, especially on windowsills or countertops where water stains are easy to get. Another perk is the color variety of the liners, which adds a fun design element without spending extra on decorative pots. I arranged a few liners with contrasting colors for a mini indoor garden display, and it instantly elevated the look of a basic planter setup. The liners held up well under repeated watering and were easy to clean and reuse, making them an eco-friendly and cost-effective alternative to store-bought cash pots. For anyone looking to organize multiple small plants neatly and creatively, this hack is definitely a works. Hack number 12, mesh produce bags as root pruning inserts. This hack uses Dollar Tree mesh produce bags as DIY root pruning inserts, and it's surprisingly effective for promoting healthier root systems. I cut the bags to size and lined the inside of small pots before adding soil and plants. The mesh allows air to reach the roots, naturally encouraging air pruning, which prevents roots from circling and promotes a denser, more fibrous root structure. Over a 6-week period, I compared plants in mesh-lined pots with those in regular pots, and the difference was noticeable. The plants with mesh inserts had more compact, healthier roots and showed faster, more vigorous growth above the soil as well. I tested this on herbs and small houseplants like spider plants and young philodendrons, and each responded well. The mesh is flexible, easy to fit into different pot sizes, and inexpensive enough to replace as needed without breaking the bank. For anyone looking to encourage better root development without buying specialized pots or inserts, this hack is a creative, low-cost solution that really works. Let's continue into cleaning and maintenance hacks. Hack number 13, microfiber dusting gloves for leaf cleaning. This hack takes a pair of Dollar Tree microfiber gloves and turns them into an easy hands-on way to clean plant leaves. I slipped the gloves on and ran my hands gently over the foliage of several houseplants, from large-leafed monstera to smaller delicate pothos leaves. The microfiber material picked up dust and debris almost instantly, leaving a noticeable shine without any extra effort. Unlike using a cloth or paper towel, you can reach the undersides of leaves and tricky corners without stressing the plant or breaking stems. I timed myself, and cleaning an entire medium-sized plant with the gloves took less than half the time it usually does, which is a huge time saver for anyone with multiple plants. Over several weeks of testing, the gloves held up well to repeated use and occasional washing. They were gentle enough that even sensitive leaves didn't get scratched, and they helped the plants look healthier and more vibrant because dust no longer blocks sunlight from reaching the leaves. For anyone who wants quick, efficient leaf cleaning without buying specialized tools, this hack is an absolute win and earns a solid works rating. Hack number 14, toothbrush and dish soap for pest removal. This hack is all about using a simple toothbrush and a bit of mild dish soap to remove pests from plant leaves and stems. I mixed a few drops of soap with water, dipped the toothbrush in, and gently brushed affected areas on a variety of plants, including pothos, spider plants, and small succulents. The bristles were soft enough to avoid damaging leaves but firm enough to dislodge tiny pests like aphids and mealybugs. Over the next few days, I monitored the plants and saw a noticeable drop in pest activity compared to untreated plants, without harming the foliage or soil. It's a hands-on method, but it gives you control over exactly where you're targeting pests and avoids harsh chemicals. Beyond immediate removal, this hack also doubles as a prevention step. Regularly brushing leaves can keep eggs and tiny insects from settling and reproducing, making it easier to maintain plant health long-term. I found it particularly useful for plants with dense foliage where spray treatments often miss spots. For anyone dealing with common indoor plant pests and looking for a gentle, cost-effective solution, this hack is practical, simple, and earns a firm works. Hack number 15, shower caps as humidity domes. This hack uses basic Dollar Tree shower caps to create mini humidity domes for plants that thrive in more humid environments, like ferns, calatheas, or young tropical seedlings. I stretched the shower cap over various pot sizes to test the fit, and it works surprisingly well even on slightly larger containers. The dome traps moisture and warmth around the plant, helping to maintain consistent humidity levels without overwatering the soil. I monitored the plants over several days and saw a clear difference. Leaves stayed perkier, tips were less prone to browning, and overall the plants looked healthier compared to those left uncovered. One of the best parts is that the shower caps are reusable. I could rinse and reset them multiple times, and they held their shape without tearing or sagging. They're flexible enough to fit a range of pot sizes, inexpensive, and lightweight, making them easy to move or adjust as needed. While not a permanent solution for large or long-term humidity needs, this is a quick, effective, and budget-friendly hack for boosting moisture around delicate indoor plants. After testing all 15 hacks, here's the rundown. Out of the 15, 7 earned a solid works, 5 fell into the maybe category, and 3 I'd skip entirely. The clear winners were the wine bottle terracotta stakes, the bamboo skewer trellises, and the cooling rack moss pole. They were inexpensive, simple to set up, and delivered results that actually improved plant health and growth. The maybe hacks weren't bad, but they either required extra effort, didn't work consistently, or only suited certain plant types. And the ones I'd skip, like a couple of decorative ideas that looked clever but added no real benefit, just didn't justify the time or cost. Overall, testing these hacks gave a clear picture of what's worth trying versus what's better left on the internet. My top 3 favorite hacks stood out not just for effectiveness, but for ease of use and versatility. The bamboo skewer trellises made climbing plants look amazing and stayed sturdy even under the weight of mature vines. The cooling rack moss pole proved that you don't need to spend $15 or more to give your climbers proper support. And the foam brush moisture meter is now a permanent part of my watering routine. It's simple, accurate, and avoids the risk of overwatering. Together, these hacks show that even small, inexpensive items from Dollar Tree can make a big difference in plant care when used thoughtfully. So, which hack surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear which one you're planning to try first. If you found this helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss more budget-friendly indoor gardening hacks. Thanks for watching Greenhaven Homes, and I'll see you in the next video with more tips to make your indoor garden thrive without breaking the bank.